28th, 585 BC. The Halys River, in what is now modern Turkey. Two of the most powerful empires in the ancient world have been at war for 5 years. The Medes, from what is now Iran, under their king Cyaxares. The Lydians, from western Anatolia, under their king Alyattes. 5 years of campaigns. 5 years of battles. 5 years of dead. And on this particular morning, both armies have assembled on the plain beside the Halys River for what both sides expect will be the decisive engagement, the battle that ends it. They are correct. It will end today. Not in the way either of them expects.
The battle begins. Historians who recorded it afterward, Herodotus chief among them, described it as fierce and equally matched, neither side gaining a decisive advantage. The plain fills with the sound and the chaos of ancient warfare. Men dying, men advancing, men pushing back. The kind of battle that could go either way, that could last hours, that ends when one side breaks. And then, in the middle of the afternoon,
to a modern person, a solar eclipse is spectacular. It is something you travel to see, something you photograph, something you watch through special glasses with a crowd of excited strangers. To a person in 585 BC, a total solar eclipse was the end of the world. There was no framework, no scientific understanding, no explanation that made the terror smaller. The sun, which had risen every day of every life that had ever been lived, had simply stopped, had been swallowed, had been extinguished. The gods were speaking, or the gods were dying, or the gods had turned away. Whatever it meant that the battle happening beneath the darkened sky was no longer the most important thing. Weapons went down, both sides, at the same time. And the battlefield went silent.
The eclipse lasted 6 minutes. 6 minutes of totality, in which the ancient world experienced something that no written account can fully convey. When the sun returned, when the light came back, and the temperature rose, and the birds began again, neither army resumed the battle. They stood. They looked at each other. They looked at the sky. And something had changed that could not be unchanged. The Medes and Lydians had been trying to kill each other for 5 years. In 6 minutes, the sky had made that seem like the wrong priority. Both kings sent envoys across the battlefield under flags of truce. And the 5 days that followed the eclipse were not days of war. They were days of negotiation, of a peace treaty being written, of a 5-year war being ended by an astronomical event that neither side had planned for.
The peace treaty was negotiated over 5 days. 5 days during which both armies remained on the field, neither advancing, neither retreating, while their kings and diplomats worked out the terms of an agreement that would hold for a generation. The treaty was sealed, according to Herodotus, by a marriage alliance, the Lydian princess Aryanis to the Median prince Astyages. The border between the two empires was set at the Halys River, the same river beside which 10,000 men had been trying to kill each other that same morning. A war that had lasted 5 years ended in 5 days, because 6 minutes of darkness changed what both sides
thought was worth fighting for. Here is what makes this story something other than a remarkable anecdote. The eclipse of May 28th, 585 BC is the oldest precisely dated event in recorded human history, because we can calculate backwards with modern astronomy exactly when a total solar eclipse crossed that specific path over that specific region of what is now Turkey. The mathematics confirm it. May 28th, 585 BC. Everything that happened before that date is estimated, approximate, debated. From that date forward, history has an anchor, a fixed point, a moment we can locate with absolute precision in the flow of deep time. The battle stopped, the war ended, and we know, to the day, exactly when it happened, because the sky wrote it down. But there is another layer to this story, one that most accounts mention briefly and then move past. One man had seen it coming. His name was Thales of Miletus, a Greek philosopher living in the Ionian city of Miletus on the coast of what is now Turkey. And according to Herodotus, Thales had predicted, before it happened, that a solar eclipse would occur in that year. Not the day, not the hour, but the year. He had looked at records, Babylonian astronomical tablets, accumulated observations of where and when eclipses had occurred over centuries. And he had seen a pattern. And from the pattern, he had made a prediction. And the prediction was correct. Nobody believed him until the day turned to night over a battlefield in Anatolia, and 10,000 soldiers dropped their weapons and proved him right.
Thales of Miletus is considered by most historians of science to be the first scientist. Not because he knew the most, not because he was always right, but because of what he was doing. Looking at natural phenomena and searching for natural explanations, not divine ones, not mythological ones, natural ones. The eclipse is not the sun god being angry. The eclipse is the moon passing between the earth and the sun. A geometric event, a predictable event. Thales did not have the complete explanation, but he had the orientation, the fundamental shift in how to ask the question. And in 585 BC, while two empires were learning to fear the sky, one man had already stopped fearing it. He had started measuring it instead. That shift from fear to measurement is arguably the most important shift in the history of human thought, and it was demonstrated on the day the sun went out over the Halys River.
The 5 days after the eclipse changed 3 things. First, a 5-year war ended. The Medes and Lydians never fought again. The Halys River became a border that held for decades. Second, the eclipse established the oldest precisely known date in history, an anchor for everything that came after. Third, and most important, Thales of Miletus was remembered. His prediction was recorded by Herodotus in the first major work of Western history, a document written a century later that preserved not just the story of the battle, but the story of the man who had looked at the same sky as everyone else and chosen to ask a different kind of question. Not, what does this mean? But when will this happen again? That question, when will this happen again, is the beginning of science. It assumes the universe is orderly, that patterns exist, that human beings can find them, that the sky is not a message from gods. It is a clock, and we can learn to read it.
Solar eclipses terrified every ancient civilization. The Chinese called them the sky dragon devouring the sun. They beat drums and shot arrows into the sky to frighten it away. The ancient Egyptians
associated eclipses with attacks on the sun god Ra. The Vikings believed the Fenrir wolf had caught the sun in its jaws. The Mesopotamians, the Babylonians, installed a substitute king during an eclipse because they believed the eclipse meant the real king would die. A decoy king to absorb the divine punishment. Every culture, every continent, the same event, the same terror, the same need to explain it as the action of something beyond. And in Miletus, one man, sitting with a collection of Babylonian astronomical tables, looked at the same fear and wrote down a date instead of a prayer.
The war between the Medes and Lydians ended in 585 BC. The Median Empire that had fought that battle was conquered by Cyrus the Great of Persia 47 years later. The Lydian Empire fell to Cyrus 17 years after that. Both empires gone. Both kings forgotten by most people alive today. The battle they were fighting when the sun went out, which seemed so consequential that morning, is a footnote, a detail in a chapter about an ancient war that most people have never heard of. What survived, what we still talk about, is not the battle. It is the eclipse, and the man who saw it coming, and what his prediction represented. The armies of two empires were trying to determine who controlled a river in Anatolia. Thales was trying to determine how the universe works. Only one of those projects is still being worked on.
Every solar eclipse you will ever see was predicted to the second, months or years in advance, by astronomers using methods that descend directly from the question Thales asked over 2,600 years ago. When will this happen again? The answer required centuries of observation, generations of astronomers, recording what they saw, passing the records to the next generation, building a model of the solar system, precise enough to calculate the path of a shadow across the surface of the Earth decades into the future. The eclipse of 585 BC stopped a war. The science that grew from asking why it happened eventually let us land on the moon, send probes beyond the solar system, photograph a black hole. It started with one man looking at the sky over Miletus and choosing measurement over fear. Everything after that is a footnote to that choice.
May 28th, 585 BC, the day the sun went out over the Halys River. Two armies stopped killing each other. A war ended. A peace treaty was signed. And one man's prediction was proven correct. The oldest precisely known date in history. The beginning of scientific prediction. The moment when one civilization chose for the first time to look at the sky and ask not what it means, but how it works. The eclipse lasted 6 minutes. The question it confirmed has lasted 2,600 years. And it is still the most important question human beings have ever asked. Not what are the gods doing, but what is actually happening? And when will it happen again? Now you know where that question started. The question, as always, is what you do with that.